Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves standing in the candlelit hush of a royal chamber. Velvet drapes drawn tight against the world, the air heavy with rosewater and expectation. Somewhere behind those painted doors, a dozen anxious girls in white veils wait, clutching their hands and their secrets. The palace smells of wax, lavender, and the thick perfume of anticipation. Here, purity isn't just a virtue, it's a ticket, a trap, a test. Even the stone walls feel like they're eavesdropping, eager for scandal. You can almost taste the anxiety, as if it's another flavor of the courtly cakes being passed around by silent, sharp-eyed servants. Welcome to a world where your worth is measured not in talents or kindness or the contents of your brain, but in the state of a thin, unseen membrane. The stakes? Oh, nothing much. Just inheritance, alliances, the reputation of your family, and sometimes your life. Here, you're more likely to be inspected than respected. Think you could fake a blush? Good. Hope you can fake a bloodstain too. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this if you're allergic to embarrassment, awkward aunties, or old men asking wildly inappropriate questions. So, before we drift any deeper, if this hushed little corner brings you even a flicker of calm, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels right in your chest. Where are you listening from? Drop your location and your local time below. Don't be shy, I promise. No one here is inspecting your bedsheets. Now breathe slow, let the weight fall off your shoulders, and sink with me into tonight's slow unraveling of the past. Right here on Historian's Diary, the corridor you're walking down is padded with tapestries, saints with upturned eyes, noble women draped in pearls, a parade of purity watching your every step. Servants glide by, eyes lowered, but you know they're listening. In the royal court, nothing is secret. Every cough, every whisper is fodder for gossip, and the rumor mill spins faster than the wheels in the laundry room. Tonight, a new bride will be presented, and the whole court is wound tight with excitement and suspicion. It isn't her wedding dress they care about, it's the veil, the symbol that she enters the king's bed as untouched as the snow drifting outside the palace windows. The white cloth is a kind of uniform, a declaration, I have followed the rules. Never mind if you were too young to understand the rules, or if the rules kept changing like the fashion in sleeves. The Queen Mother sits at the end of the corridor, looking like she's been carved from alabaster. Her gaze is sharp enough to snip thread, and no detail escapes her notice. The pearls at her throat are said to represent her own unblemished past, though if you ask the old grooms in the stables, they'd tell you a livelier story involving a baker, a summer storm, and a pie that went mysteriously missing. In the court, purity is a performance. You learn early to hide your laughter, to never run, that's for peasants, and to make sure your shoes never show a scuff. You eat sparingly at banquets, not because you aren't hungry, but because no one trusts a girl with an appetite. Hunger is unseemly. Desire, even for food, hints at other more dangerous appetites. Instead, you nibble, you simper, you learn to listen with your eyes as much as your ears. Every conversation is laced with warning. On the night before the wedding, the future bride is led to her chamber, a procession of chaperones trailing behind her, clutching prayer books and rosaries. It's a ritual older than the stones in the castle walls. The girl, wrapped in her white veil, looks impossibly young, her hair braided tight, her hands shaking just enough that only the closest maid can see. In some courts, this night is spent in prayer. In others, it's an endless recitation of rules. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't remove your veil until told. And for heaven's sake, don't ask any questions. The chaperones leave as silently as they arrived, closing the heavy door behind them. The air thickens with the scent of beeswax and something less easily named. Fear, perhaps, or hope. On the bed sits a small bundle, linen sheets, snowy and smooth, with no wrinkle. You're told that this is not just a bed, but a stage. Tomorrow, everyone will want to see what kind of show you've put on. The linen sheets, snowy and smooth, with no wrinkles. You're told that this is not just a bed, but a stage. Tomorrow, everyone will want to see what kind of show you've put on. As you lie down, you notice a tiny stain on the corner of the sheet, almost invisible. You wonder if it will matter. You wonder if you'll be believed if you say it was there already. The weight of tradition presses on your chest, heavier than the feather-stuffed mattress. Outside, the palace hums with anticipation. Inside, you are alone with the expectations of 100 generations. Down the hall, the Queen Mother sips her wine, thinking of her own wedding night, and the dozen after that. Not all of them ended with applause. Sometimes, the audience booed. Sometimes, they demanded proof. In the morning, the corridors fill with anxious footsteps. Servants whisper, carrying trays of sweetmeats and ewers of wine. The court physician hovers in the background, already preparing his sternest face. No one is more skilled at disappointment than a royal doctor on inspection duty. You dress again, layers of silk and linen, each piece a reminder of how many eyes will be upon you. The veil comes last, soft and almost comforting. For a moment you allow yourself to believe in its magic, as if it could shield you from the scrutiny to come. Downstairs, the courtiers gather like magpies, pecking at every detail. Did you hear? The bride's hands shook when she took the cup. That's never a good sign. Her father looked pale. Maybe he knows something we don't. I hear her mother brought an extra set of sheets, just in case. The sun rises, pale and reluctant. The court assembles, faces polished and expectant. Today they aren't looking for smiles or clever conversation. They want evidence. The ritual is as old as the monarchy. A white cloth, displayed for all to see, as if a single night's event can confirm a lifetime's worth of stories. You feel every gaze like a pinprick. The bedsheet is presented, held up like a banner, inspected by women with practiced eyes. Some lean in, squinting. Others purse their lips. In a corner, a young girl looks away, suddenly very interested in her own shoes. If the court finds what it wants, a single drop, a stain, a mark, there is a murmur of satisfaction. Congratulations are exchanged, gifts bestowed, and the bride is congratulated for her virtue. If not, well, things get complicated. Sometimes a priest is summoned to pray for a miracle. Sometimes the girl's mother faints. Occasionally a sharp-eyed maid is blamed for laundering the sheets too thoroughly. But everyone knows the truth. In this court, purity isn't just about what you've done. It's about what others believe you've done. And belief is a slippery thing, as fragile as the thread holding your veil in place. There are, of course, ways to cheat. A clever maid might smuggle in a drop of chicken blood. A desperate bride might prick her own finger. You wonder how many have tried, and how many have failed. You wonder if anyone in this palace really believes in the rituals, or if everyone is just playing along, waiting for someone else to be caught. As the day wears on, the gossip spreads like wildfire. By evening, everyone knows the outcome, whether the bride is a rose unopened or a flower plucked. The words change, but the meaning never does. You learn that in the royal court, purity is a kind of currency, spent carefully and guarded fiercely. Lose it, and you lose more than respect. You risk everything. The Queen Mother retires to her chambers, satisfied for now. The bride, still wrapped in her veil, sits quietly, counting the days until her next test. The servants go about their work, washing the sheets, scrubbing away the evidence, readying the room for the next performance. You drift through the palace, taking in the sights and sounds of a world obsessed with appearances. In every corner, you see reminders of the rituals, white flowers in the gardens, symbolizing innocence, silver bells on the doors, meant to ward off temptation, tiny, careful stitches in every hem, a reminder that nothing is left to chance. Outside, the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You realize that the rituals of purity aren't just about one night, or one girl. They are woven into every part of court life, from the way you walk to the words you choose. Here, even the moonlight seems to judge, shining cold and unblinking through the palace windows. And so you move forward, step by cautious step, always aware that you are being watched, always aware that in the royal court, the line between honor and humiliation is as thin as the veil covering your face. It's the morning after, and the world is holding its breath. You wake before dawn, heart pounding, to the muffled sounds of water being poured and slippers shuffling on stone. Today's drama is older than your grandmother's rosary, the bedsheet ritual. In royal courts across Europe and far beyond, the proof of a bride's virginity isn't a whispered promise, but a public spectacle. Forget privacy. Forget dignity. It's a parade for the high and mighty, everyone from the Queen Mother to that eavesdropping scullery maid, whose hearing is suspiciously sharp when gossip is on the line. At least you think. No one's selling tickets. Not officially, anyway. You shuffle to the washstand, splash water on your face, and wonder if any amount of scrubbing could ever remove the embarrassment that comes from being the centerpiece of a bedsheet parade. The court physician arrives first, solemn as a judge. He's followed by two women from the Queen's household, one as brisk as vinegar, the other with a sympathetic smile that's almost worse than scorn. They inspect the linen like it's an ancient map, searching for landmarks. You recall last night's whispering, "If there's no blood, there'll be trouble." The phrase repeats in your mind like a nursery rhyme gone wrong. The scrutiny is meticulous. The physician prods at a faint spot with a finger, humming to himself, while the two ladies lean in, nostrils flaring. The air is tense enough to curdle cream. The Queen Mother's advisor stands back, arms folded, watching with eyes that miss nothing. You try to breathe, but the room feels smaller with each passing second. In many royal courts, a spotless sheet is a disaster. The implications are as clear as the sunlight slanting across the floor. Is she a fraud? Did someone get there first? The questions hang in the air, unspoken but deafening. A single missed spot, whether from nervousness, anatomy, or plain bad luck, can upend dynasties. Sometimes, a helpful maid is blamed for laundering too thoroughly. Sometimes, the bride's diet is questioned, as if a few extra figs might have changed the outcome. You start to wonder if court life is just one long game of whodunit, starring you as the clueless suspect. You'd laugh if it weren't your reputation at stake. Somewhere, someone jokes, if only they inspected the royal treasury with half as much care. But here on this morning, your fate hangs on the interpretation of a tiny stain. There are those who prepare for this test with more cunning than faith. Whispered advice passed from sister to sister, friend to friend. Prick your finger, hide a sliver of animal blood, call upon a loyal maid to slip a red-dyed cloth beneath the sheet. Sometimes it works, sometimes the deception is discovered, and the consequences spiral. You wonder how many women throughout history have knelt in prayer, not for a happy marriage, but for a convincing bloodstain. In one French court, the bedsheet would be paraded through the Great Hall, held aloft on a wooden rod. Courtiers would jostle for position, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the telltale mark. The royal steward, whose job included inventorying everything from fine silver to unfortunately soiled linen, would record the event with solemn ceremony. Her virtue is proved, he'd announce, as if stamping a royal decree. You wonder if anyone ever dared to disagree. Elsewhere, in the Italian city-states, the process was slightly less theatrical, but no less nerve-wracking. Mothers-in-law would crowd into the new couple's bedchamber at sunrise, peering at the linens, sometimes sniffing them as if searching for the scent of sin. More than one unlucky bride was accused of plotting, bribery, or worse if the evidence was lacking. One Milanese noblewoman, accused of insufficient proof, was sent back to her family in disgrace, a return shipment no one wanted to accept. Even when the ritual succeeded, relief was fleeting. A single night's proof was no guarantee of future happiness. The Queen Mother's smile might last for a day, but tongues kept wagging long after the sheets were laundered. Every woman in the palace knew the real lesson. Nothing you do will ever be enough for everyone. And yet, some women turn the ritual to their own advantage. A clever girl with quick wits and trustworthy friends might stage the entire affair, providing a bloodied cloth before the sun had even risen. Occasionally, an ally in the laundry would discover the crucial evidence and deliver it with appropriate fanfare. You suspect more than one royal reputation was rescued by a timely prick of the thumb and a sharp-eyed chambermaid. The court itself seems to run on rumour as much as ritual. By midday, everyone knows the result. If there is blood, the household celebrates well, as much as anyone can celebrate a stain. If not, the Queen Mother becomes icy. The king's advisors grow nervous, and the bride is left to stew in a soup of suspicion and whispered slander. You escape to the gardens, trying to avoid the court's curious stares. The air is fresh, the flowers blooming despite the tension that lingers behind you. But even here, you can't shake the feeling of being watched. The gardeners gossip in low voices, sharing stories of past brides who failed the test and what became of them. Some were quietly sent away to distant relatives, others forced into convents. The lucky ones, if you can call them that, simply faded from courtly life, their names spoken only in cautionary tales. Sometimes the ritual takes a darker turn. You hear whispers of girls subjected to medical examinations by the court's physician, supposedly to confirm the state of their hymen. These inspections are as invasive as they are humiliating, a reminder that in the royal court your body is never entirely your own. The doctor might claim scientific detachment, but his conclusions carry the weight of law. Woe to the bride with an anatomy that doesn't match the textbook illustration. One court physician, famed for his precision, once declared a princess unfit for marriage, based solely on his examination. The resulting scandal rocked the palace for months, ending only when a rival doctor discovered a previously overlooked sign of virtue. You wonder if any of these men know what they're looking for, or if the whole affair is just a game of power and appearances. There are, of course, those who quietly rebel, a knowing glance exchanged between bridesmaids, a snicker behind a fan, a whispered joke at the expense of the court's obsession. One woman, legendary for her wit, reportedly asked the Queen Mother if she'd like to inspect her soul instead of her sheets. The Queen, scandalized, fainted on the spot, a moment that still elicits giggles in the servants' quarters. And so the cycle continues. Every wedding brings another round of anxiety, another parade of evidence, another lesson in the art of surviving scrutiny. You realize that, in some ways, it's the court's obsession with purity that binds everyone together. The rules might be unfair, the rituals absurd, but in this strange world, everyone knows their part. You return to your chamber, passing a group of young girls clustered around a window. They look at you with wide eyes, half fearful, half admiring. To them, you're a cautionary tale in the making, a reminder of what's expected and what's at stake. You offer a small, reassuring smile, though you're not sure it helps. As night falls, the palace settles into uneasy silence. Somewhere, a musician plays a melancholy tune on a lute. The moonlight slants across the marble floors, catching on a stray thread, a dropped ribbon, a secret yet to be discovered. You drift to sleep, knowing tomorrow will bring another test, another judgment, another day of being watched. But for now, in this brief moment between rituals, you find a sliver of peace. Maybe tomorrow, the world will be different. Maybe the next bride will walk her path with less fear and more freedom. Or maybe, like you, she'll simply learn to hide her scars behind a smile and a spotless sheet. You wake to the steady rhythm of footsteps echoing down the marble corridor, boots and slippers alike. Soft, hurried, determined. No one is ever truly alone in a palace, least of all on the morning after a royal wedding night. But today, the anxiety is sharper, the glances more pointed. You realize it's not just about you anymore, it's about everything you represent. Here in the Grand Hall, every secret is the court's business. In the royal courts of Europe, and far beyond, the obsession with virginity wasn't just a matter of reputation, it was the keystone in the very architecture of power. The so-called purity of a bride was regarded as the only true insurance policy for royal bloodlines. For all the talk of destiny and divine right, a single whisper about a bride's virtue could send a dynasty tumbling. You remember stories murmured over bread and honey in the kitchen of kingdoms lost because a girl's innocence was doubted, alliances shattered like the glass goblets thrown at drunken feasts. You move through the palace, trailing silks and unease. Your attendants are already busy, folding yesterday's evidence, tucking away tokens of virtue as if hiding gold from thieves. There's a sense of relief in the air, tinged with something else, resentment perhaps, or the knowledge that today you passed, tomorrow it could be someone else's turn on the invisible scaffold. This morning, you're summoned to the king's private audience chamber. The walls are lined with tapestries, battle scenes, saints, and inevitably, the image of a pale, solemn virgin, eyes lowered, hands clasped in prayer. Every guest to this room knows the real meaning behind her posture. Be as she is. Do not tempt fate. The king greets you with measured warmth, but you can feel the curiosity simmering beneath his courtesy. To him, and to everyone else in this gilded labyrinth, your body is not entirely your own. It's a vessel for royal succession, a vault that must remain locked until the key is officially turned. Your marriage, like so many before, is less about love and more about inheritance. The royal family has already mapped out your future children, how they'll look, whom they'll marry, what treaties they'll secure with their mere existence, but it all hinges on this single delicate axis, your maidenhood. Lose it prematurely, and the entire house of cards comes trembling down. It would be funny if it weren't so absurd. You think about the old joke, a prince's word is worth a crown, but a princess's word is worth less than a drop of blood on linen. And here in this hush of power and paranoia, you realize how true it is. You remember stories, some whispered, some shouted, of dynasties ruined by rumor, not fact, of princesses locked away for the suspicion of having looked too long at a stable boy, of alliances broken because a noble house wanted an excuse to snatch a dowry back. This isn't just a European story. In the Mughal courts of India, the purity of a noblewoman was considered so crucial that entire contingents of female guards and attendants, royal, sharp-eyed, and terrifying, were tasked with ensuring the seclusion of royal brides-to-be. In imperial China, elaborate ceremonies confirmed the virginity of an empress, with dowries returned in disgrace if anything less than perfection was presented on the wedding night. You see the echoes of this everywhere: veils, locked doors, chaperones who never sleep. You recall the somber warning your own mother whispered as she pinned a final jewel into your hair, voice so low only you could hear. You carry the honor of generations. Do not let a single careless moment end a dynasty. You wanted to ask her about her own wedding night, about whether she ever feared not living up to the ritual, but her eyes told you not to pry. Some stories are too heavy to share, even between mother and daughter. Your father, meanwhile, is already negotiating for more land, more titles, more gold. Your virtue, your body, is the first domino in a cascade of transactions. Dowries, inheritances, and political alliances depend on a secret no one can truly prove, but everyone must pretend to verify. In public, the king makes a show of confidence, but privately, he consults with priests, doctors, and lawyers, just in case. At breakfast, you sit in the long shadow of your own reputation. The meal is formal and tense. Your new husband tries to make light conversation, but you can see the relief in his eyes. Relief that the ritual succeeded, that the bedsheet bore witness, that his lineage will not be questioned. He knows that his power too rests on your shoulders. If your virtue is doubted, his legitimacy cracks. If you pass, he walks taller. In the weeks after, you watch as the court resumes its slow, careful dance. Marriages are arranged, treaties signed, dowries exchanged. Behind every decision is the silent calculus of trust. Who can guarantee the purity of their daughters? Who might be hiding a scandal beneath layers of silk? The irony isn't lost on you. Men who boast of conquests, fathers who wink at mistresses, and yet when it comes to royal inheritance, it's a single girl's innocence that's guarded like the crown jewels. You hear stories from the pages and laundresses about the elaborate measures taken to ensure this purity. Some families keep daughters in seclusion from childhood, surrounded by older women whose only job is to watch, warn, and if necessary punish. In Spain, the phrase "la doncella vigilada" becomes a running joke, the watched maiden, always under someone's thumb. In France, duennas are notorious for their sharp eyes and sharper tongues, ready to raise alarm at the slightest whisper of impropriety. It all feels performative, yet the consequences are all too real. One misstep, one ill-timed glance, one rumor, no matter how false, and the entire machinery of succession grinds to a halt. You think about those girls whose names you don't know, who didn't pass the test, whose lives ended not with a scandal but with a whimper, packed off to a convent, written out of family history, remembered only in cautionary tales. Meanwhile, for those who do pass, the pressure only intensifies. The next test comes soon enough: pregnancy. Suddenly, Everyone has an opinion about your appetite, your complexion. Whether you crave sour cherries or sleep all afternoon, your body is public property, to be commented on and discussed in endless detail. The irony, you think, is that even if you do everything right, it may never be enough. And so you learn the art of survival. How to walk without drawing attention. How to speak in half-truths. How to smile when you want to scream. You become an expert in the court's real currency, reputation and rumor. You perfect the art of appearing perfect. The king, for all his power, is not immune to anxiety. You see him confide in his advisors late at night, wondering if the bloodline is secure, if the alliance will hold. You watch the Queen Mother count her grandchildren before they're born, placing all her hopes on a future that depends on your past. There's one small comfort in all this. You're not alone. Every woman at court carries the same burden, lives the same double life. You exchange glances in the corridors, find small moments of solidarity, a wink, a shared smile, a joke about the court physician's poor eyesight. The youngest girls look to you for guidance. The older women offer silent encouragement. Together, you weather the storm. One afternoon, you pass a group of noblewomen in the rose garden discussing the latest scandal, a princess whose wedding was annulled when her virtue was questioned. You wonder if anyone will remember her story in 100 years, or if it will be lost among the endless tales of suspicion and disappointment. As the sun sets, you realize the cycle will continue. Another girl, another wedding, another test. The rituals may change, but the obsession remains. And somewhere, deep inside, you hope that one day, the world will value more than a single night's proof. Until then, you keep your head high, your secrets close, and your footsteps light. After all, in the royal court, you survive not by being perfect, but by convincing everyone else that you are. You drift through the palace gardens, the weight of last night's rituals fading, but never fully gone, replaced by the quiet attention of daily life under watchful eyes. Today, the real negotiations begin. The bedsheets have been examined and mercifully approved, but your worth is now discussed behind every door, whispered, measured, and bargained over. It's the dowry season, and the future of nations pivots not just on treaties or swordplay, but on a young woman's body, swathed in silk and secrets. The bedsheets have been examined and mercifully approved, but your worth is now discussed behind every door, whispered, measured, and bargained over. It's the dowry season, and the future of nations pivots not just on treaties or swordplay, but on a young woman's body, swathed in silk and secrets. Dowries, those glittering piles of silver, gold, and land, are the currency of royal matchmaking. In the royal courts of Italy, France, Spain, and beyond, the size of a girl's dowry speaks volumes about her family's power and ambitions, but a far greater premium is placed on her status as an untouched bride. You're not simply a daughter, you're a bargaining chip, the human equivalent of a promise to pay. Each ounce of gold is only as valuable as the guarantee that you are, in every sense, pure. You sit at a carved table as your father, looking stiffer than usual, haggles with a rival lord over marriage terms. The conversation glides from wheat yields and cattle to the less tangible matter of your reputation. Of course, my daughter has been watched by the finest governesses, he says, and the other lord nods, both men pretending that your innocence is as plain as the family crest above the fireplace. The irony isn't lost on you. Here are two grown men, strategizing over something as intimate and as unprovable as your maidenhood, as if trading horses at a fair. In some families, the waiting is everything. Daughters are sequestered, forbidden to visit the gardens without a chaperone. You remember the stories of Spanish princesses who spent their childhoods behind closed shutters, only glimpsing the sun for a few precious moments a day. A joke among the kitchen staff. She's as pale as flour, but at least her virtue's unspoiled. You smirk quietly. It's the kind of gallows humor that keeps the staff sane. These rituals have ripple effects throughout the entire household. The servants are on edge, the maids careful with gossip. Even the cook's choice of dishes is scrutinized. Too many sweets, and they'll say the bride is spoiled. Too little meat, and they'll fret over her health. When the day of negotiation comes, you're dressed in the family's finest, the white of your gown so dazzling it hurts your eyes. It's all for show, of course, but you play your part like a seasoned actress. Your mother stands nearby, a silent observer. She's been through this before, knows the stakes, and you see the flicker of sympathy behind her composed mask. "Smile," she whispers when no one else is listening. But not too much. You wonder what advice she was given on her own wedding day. How much of her life has been shaped by these endless subtle games. By midday, the house is crowded with envoys, stewards, and a wandering bard who has somehow snuck inside, hoping for a coin and a new story. The main hall is abuzz, and your name, your body really, is the topic of conversation for people you've never met. You're glad for the distraction when one of the younger maids sneaks you a candid date. Eat, miss, but carefully. You don't want to look greedy. You manage a conspiratorial smile. Every gesture is loaded with meaning. To be hungry is to be suspect. To be too thin is to be weak. To laugh too loudly is to hint at hidden desires. The negotiations drag on. Your father grows redder in the face as the rival lord's demands escalate. The dowry must fit her station, but the assurance of her virtue is worth far more. You're reminded of a story your governess once told you about an English countess whose wedding was called off because a servant claimed to have seen her just running in the meadow, after a summer storm. The implication: a girl with that much energy can't be trusted. You try not to roll your eyes. Even now, every move you make is a line in the ledger. At last, the bargaining ends with a flourish of documents, a few tight-lipped smiles, and a promise that the union will strengthen the realm. You are led out to the balcony, where the court expects to see the blushing bride, a living emblem of her family's honor. You stand straight, hands folded, veil perfectly in place. The crowd below is a sea of eager faces. Someone tosses a rose. You resist the urge to step back. For a moment, you lock eyes with another young woman, waiting her turn, and share a silent moment of camaraderie. She nods, as if to say, "We all play the same game." The afternoon passes in a blur of pleasantries. A parade of relatives arrives to assess your readiness. Elderly aunts pinch your cheek, pronouncing you fresh-faced. One cousin, a notorious flirt, offers a sly wink and whispers, "You'll outlast them all." It's the most honest thing you've heard all day. When the sun sets, the palace comes alive with feasting and music. You sit at the high table, careful to touch only the edge of your wine. Laughter rings out, but you sense the undercurrent. Who is watching whom? Whose fortunes will rise or fall with this match? Even the jesters are careful with their jokes, never daring to mention the real business of the day. As the evening wears on, you feel the eyes of the world upon you, waiting to see if you'll stumble. Later, as the guests drift away, you find yourself alone in the corridor. The moonlight slants through a narrow window, illuminating your reflection in a polished shield on the wall. You study yourself, hair perfectly arranged, dress spotless, face composed, and yet, behind your eyes, a flicker of rebellion. You know that while your dowry and your virtue are currency today, you have more to offer the world than a balance sheet or a rumour. You remember the words of a wise old lady in the kitchens, who once pressed a warm roll into your hand and whispered, "Your value isn't in your dowry, my girl, but in your backbone. These games won't last forever." At the time, you'd laughed, but now her words seem heavier. You promise yourself to remember them, even as the world demands more evidence. There's a peculiar relief when you finally retreat to your chamber. Shoes kicked off, veil tossed aside. The room feels both safe and confining, a gilded cage. You sit by the window, listening to the distant music, watching the stars. You think about all the girls who came before you, and those who will come after, each one a piece on someone else's chessboard. Each one taught to believe that her worth begins and ends with a secret kept or a secret lost. And yet, in this quiet moment, you recognize a different kind of power. The ability to endure, to adapt, to hold on to a sliver of yourself even as you're bartered away. You resolve, quietly, that no matter how many dowries are haggled over, how many rituals observed, you'll keep something private and unbroken. Your own self, hidden beneath the silks and the stories. As you close your eyes, you hear the distant bells of midnight. Somewhere, another deal is being struck, another future mapped out in golden linen. But for now, you let yourself breathe easy, if only for a little while. because you know, tomorrow, the games begin anew. The dawn after the negotiations always seems brighter, but it's an illusion, a trick of sunlight on stone. With the dowry settled and the gossip briefly satisfied, the palace resumes its ritualized dance. One more day in the long campaign of royal matchmaking. Now the court's focus shifts from the bargaining table to the next grand spectacle, the parade of eligible brides. You hear the bustle long before you see it. The corridors filled with the scent of pressed violets and new-washed linen, servants rushing in and out of rooms with armfuls of embroidered gowns and ribbons. In the antechamber, a seamstress crouches, biting off a thread with quick, nervous snaps. Your dress, white of course, always white, hangs from the door. The colour is less a symbol of joy than a public declaration, untouched, unsullied, worthy of being displayed. In the antechamber, a seamstress crouches, biting off a thread with quick, nervous snaps. Your dress, white of course, always white, hangs from the door. The colour is less a symbol of joy than a public declaration, untouched, unsullied, worthy of being displayed. You're not alone. All across the palace, other noble girls are being readied in similar ways. There's a nervous energy, a sense that your animal's being led to market, except even the livestock is spared this much fussing. Chaperones hover, their faces tight with duty, adjusting your veil, smoothing down stray hairs, reminding you again and again not to meet anyone's eyes for too long, not to stumble, not to breathe too loudly. You'd laugh if you weren't so aware that every misstep becomes a story retold for years. When the hour arrives, a hush falls over the palace. The grand doors open, and you file out into the corridor with the others. Each girl arranged in an order determined by her family status, the size of her dowry, or the importance of the treaty she is meant to secure. The men, fathers, uncles, stewards hover nearby, proud and anxious. You glimpse your father's face, trying for a reassuring smile that looks more like he's eaten something disagreeable. The parade winds through the halls to the throne room, where the Queen Mother and the King sit in judgment. You cross a floor so polished you can see your own reflection, your steps muffled by the thickness of the carpet. At each doorway you are announced. Name, age, family, a quick, subtle mention of your virtue. It feels like a performance, and you, the lead actress, have never seen the script. Inside the throne room you stand in a long line with the other girls, hands folded, faces arranged in polite serenity. Around you, courtiers murmur, weighing each candidate as if examining fruit at a market, appraising posture, complexion, and that elusive thing called grace. Someone sneezes, and you feel a wave of sympathy for the unfortunate girl beside you, whose nerves have finally betrayed her. It's only a sneeze, but tomorrow it will be. Did you hear? Lady Juliet couldn't even hold herself together for the parade. At the center of this pageantry is the Queen Mother, regal and unreadable. Her approval is the real prize. One nod, and your family's prospects soar. A frown and doors slam shut all across the realm. You remember hearing of a girl who fainted at the Queen Mother's feet, too delicate for court life, they said. Her nerves are unsuitable for marriage. She was sent away before the week was out. Her father's fortunes dimmed overnight. And then, the king's gaze passes over you, weighing your worth, though he barely knows your name. For the older men in the room, this isn't about you at all. It's about alliances and land, heirs and peace treaties. You might as well be a signature on parchment. It's hard not to notice the contrast between this rigid pageant and the chaos of the world outside these walls. Beyond the palace, the market is alive with shouts and laughter, women haggling for fish, children darting between stalls. Here every smile is calculated, every gesture rehearsed. The only real laughter is the whispered kind, traded between girls when the chaperones aren't listening. After the parade, you're permitted briefly to mingle in the courtyard, where potential suitors and their families circulate, each conversation carefully monitored. Here, wit is permitted, but only in tiny measured doses. A joke too sharp, a laugh too loud, and you're marked as too forward, yet you find yourself craving connection, a real exchange beneath the endless performance. You recall a tale of a clever princess who, tired of being displayed like a prized chicken, tucked a small frog inside her glove and let it loose during the introductions. The ensuing chaos gave her just enough time to sneak out to the kitchens for a slice of pie and a real conversation with the baker's son. The story is a favourite among the maids, passed down as a secret act of rebellion. By mid-afternoon, you are exhausted, not from physical effort, but from the strain of being observed, measured, found worthy, or wanting. You notice how each girl tries to conceal her own anxiety, how you all become experts in hiding trembling hands and forced smiles. There's a certain camaraderie in this, the understanding that for a few hours you are not rivals but allies in survival. When the event ends, the families depart, the girls are shepherded back to their rooms, and the palace settles into an uneasy silence. You return to your chamber, feeling hollow and strangely victorious. You survived another day of being paraded, another round of judgments. Outside, the sun dips low, painting gold across the city rooftops. You lean out your window, breathing in air unperfumed by violets, watching commoners end their day. For a fleeting moment, you envy their freedom. Evening brings another ritual. The post-parade dinner, a chance for families to gossip, to plan, to boast or console. Your mother's voice is gentle as she fixes your hair. "You were perfect," she says, though you know she means you made no mistakes. Your father is already deep in conversation with a diplomat about the next steps. What alliances are possible now that your virtue has been so publicly displayed? You share a quiet meal, trading glances with your siblings, who are both proud and a little afraid for you. The youngest asks, in a whisper, "Do you think I'll have to do that too?" You squeeze her hand and smile, hoping she'll have choices you never had. Late at night, you sit by your small candle, writing in a hidden notebook, your only true confidant. You record the events of the day, the parade, the glances, the moments of kindness and cruelty. You end with a promise to yourself to hold on to something private, something real, no matter how many parades or rituals lie ahead. Because here, in the world of the royal court, you are both on display and invisible, a symbol, a prize, a bargaining chip. But behind the veils and the pageantry, you remind yourself you are still you, and the story isn't over yet. If the parade of brides was a spectacle, the next ritual is something else entirely, a ceremony shrouded in secrecy, scented with rosewater and the sharp tang of anxiety. In the days leading up to the wedding, you and the other chosen girls are cloistered in a special suite of chambers, forbidden to see any men except priests or doctors. The world outside shrinks to whispers and candlelight, a hush broken only by the distant tolling of bells or the shuffle of slippers on ancient stone. This is the time of cleansing, the formal purification before a noble girl's wedding night. The custom has its roots in older, stranger times, when priests, midwives, and superstitious mothers believed that maidenhood was both a physical state and a spiritual one. You soon discover that here, the lines between religion, medicine, and rumor blur until nothing makes sense but the rules themselves. Your days begin at sunrise with ritual baths. The water is cool, sometimes bracing, poured over you by the matrons of the court. They sing hymns and mutter prayers as they scrub your skin, their hands efficient and impersonal. To wash away the world, they say. Sometimes you're not sure if they mean dirt or desire. The soap stings your eyes, and the only laughter comes from the older women, trading barbed comments about whose daughter is most in need of purification. Someone jokes, if they scrub any harder they'll take the skin right off, and you can't help but giggle, a sound quickly smothered by a stern glance. After bathing comes the anointing oils, and perfumes rubbed into your hair and on your wrists. Frankincense, lavender, and bitter myrrh, aromas meant to ward off evil, though you suspect they're mostly meant to cover nerves. The chamber fills with the heavy, heady scent until you almost forget the world outside exists. Someone reads aloud from a book of saints, describing the virtues of martyrs who conveniently were also all virgins. You're supposed to be inspired, but mostly you just feel tired. Meals are simple: broths, soft breads, small portions of fruit. No spices, nothing too rich or tempting. To calm the blood, the matrons insist, and keep your humours in balance. You notice how the older girls pick at their food, and one whispers to you, if we eat too much, they'll say we're greedy. If we eat too little, they'll fret about our health. You quickly master the art of leaving just enough crumbs. The conversation turns, as it always does, to stories. The older girls trade secrets: how to sit, how to answer questions, how to keep your eyes lowered but not so much that you seem meek. There are whispered warnings too. Don't talk to the new priest, he asks too many questions. Don't accept the second cup of tea, they say it's for your nerves, but it's just valerian to keep you quiet. Nights are the hardest. In the glow of a single candle, you listen as one of the matrons recounts a tale of a girl who refused the purification only to find her marriage cursed with misfortune. The story is clearly meant as a warning, but you hear the rebellious laughter just beneath the surface. Someone throws a pillow, someone else giggles. In the dark, you are girls again, free for a moment from the burden of symbolism. But the ritual doesn't stop with baths and stories. There are tests of piety hours spent kneeling on cold stone, reciting prayers, promising to be good, to be pure, to serve your family and your new husband. Sometimes a priest will appear, droning on about the dangers of temptation, his voice so monotonous you almost doze off. There are lessons too. How to keep secrets, how to avoid scandal, how to say no without ever actually saying it. You wonder if the older women remember their own time in these rooms, or if they've buried the memories so deep that only rituals remain. There are practical instructions as well. How to wash your face with rose water so your skin glows. How to braid your hair so it lies flat beneath the veil. How to keep your hands folded, never fidgeting, never clenched, so no one suspects a flicker of nerves. The matrons demonstrate the art of moving gracefully, like a swan gliding over a pond, and you practice until your legs ache. You are told to look serene, to be silent, to speak only when spoken to. You are an emblem now, one matron says, a vessel for the hopes of your family. You wonder what would happen if you dropped the act for just 1 second. Sometimes you catch glimpses of the world outside, children playing in the garden, a stable boy leading horses to the river. You envy their freedom, their lack of ceremony. For you, the cloister is a kind of limbo, neither girl nor woman, waiting to be transformed by a single night and a single ritual. One day, a messenger arrives with a velvet pouch. Inside is a tiny polished stone, meant to be tucked into your bodice. For protection, the matron explains, though you suspect it's more for tradition than magic. There are amulets, 2 tiny crosses or bits of ribbon, talismans against evil, and perhaps against fear. The older girls compare their tokens, joking about which charms are most effective. Mine worked, one laughs. My husband hasn't spoken to me in a week. As the wedding day approaches, the rituals grow more elaborate. The baths last longer, the prayers stretch on. Your mother visits, squeezing your hand and offering quiet encouragement. You see the worry in her eyes, the same fear that haunted her own wedding week, the same uncertainty about what comes next. She hugs you a little too tightly, whispering, "You'll be fine. Just remember who you are." On the final night, the air is thick with anticipation. The matrons wrap you in fresh linen, trace a cross on your forehead, and lead you to the small chapel at the edge of the palace. There you kneel for a blessing. The priest's words blur together. Something about purity, about sacrifice, about the endless chain of daughters who came before you. The candlelight flickers, and you feel for a moment suspended between worlds. When you finally rise, the matrons brush your hair one last time, braid white ribbons into the strands, and kiss your forehead. You are ready, they say. You don't feel ready. How could anyone? But you stand tall, gather your courage, and step back into the light. As you walk through the corridor, heading towards your wedding chamber, the air tastes different. There's relief, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. The rituals of purity have shaped you, taught you how to move, how to survive, how to keep a part of yourself hidden away. In the end, you realize the greatest cleansing isn't in the baths or the prayers, but in your quiet determination to hold on to your own story, no matter what comes next. The palace resumes its rhythm. The bells toll. The matrons prepare for the next round of brides. But you, newly purified, step forward into a future as uncertain as it is inevitable. The memory of these cloistered days lingering like the scent of lavender on your skin. If you thought your time in the purification chambers was invasive, wait until you meet the testers. Yes, that's what they're called, an entire cadre of women, whose sole job is to confirm the chastity of royal brides. In this world, trust is in short supply, and suspicion, well, it's practically a sport. It always begins the same way: a knock at your chamber door just after dawn, before breakfast, before your thoughts can even collect themselves into full sentences. The matrons arrive with brisk efficiency, flanked by a pair of older, sharp-eyed women brought in from distant towns specifically for their experience. These women are paid handsomely and often walk with the air of a judge about to deliver a verdict. You wonder how one applies for such a job. Qualifications: enjoys long walks, fresh linen, and asking awkward questions. The matrons arrive with brisk efficiency, flanked by a pair of older, sharp-eyed women brought in from distant towns specifically for their experience. These women are paid handsomely and often walk with the air of a judge about to deliver a verdict. You wonder how one applies for such a job. Qualifications: enjoys long walks, fresh linen, and asking awkward questions. The process is a kind of theatre, one that everyone hates, but everyone accepts. In England, France, and Russia, the royal courts all have their version. Sometimes the testers are noble widows, other times midwives or retired nurses, all claiming expertise in matters that should never have become so public. Their task: to inspect, to question, to poke and prod, and pronounce judgment. You do your best not to squirm. You sit, cloaked in a heavy robe, as they examine your hands for calluses, your hair for signs of secret assignations, your neck for love bites. But most of all, their attention is fixed on the most intimate kind of proof. The whispers about their methods are legendary. Old stories passed down from maid to maid, each more ridiculous than the last. They use goose feathers. They check for magical birthmarks. They have a sixth sense for sin. In reality, it's mostly a lot of awkward questions and a few intrusive glances. You learn quickly to answer without hesitation. No, I have never been alone with a man. Yes, I know my prayers. No, I don't have any unexplained bruises. Every answer is carefully weighed, your tone judged as much as your words. A pause is as damning as a confession. The testers discuss you as if you aren't there. She blushes too easily. Nervous, perhaps. Her posture is good, but is it too confident? They debate your virtue like two merchants haggling over a piece of silk. It would be almost funny if it weren't about your entire future. Sometimes they ask for the opinion of the housekeeper or the laundress. You hear snippets. Never saw her speak to the stable boys. She always went straight to chapel. Your life is a mosaic of tiny observations, stitched together into a verdict. In the worst cases, rumors of failed tests sweep through the palace before breakfast is even served. Once you overheard a maid say, "Remember Lady Agnes? Her tester said she was too worldly for a maiden." Gone the next day. No one ever explains what worldly means, but everyone understands its consequences. After the inspection, you're dismissed with a bland smile and a reminder to rest before your big day. As you leave, you catch sight of the next girl in line, clutching her robe like a shield. Your eyes meet, and in that instant, you both understand this is survival, not ceremony. Not all testers are cruel. Some look away during the inspection, their hands gentle, their questions softened by empathy. One old widow, her own hair braided with silver, whispers, "This isn't about you, child. It's about them." She squeezes your hand before sending you on your way. You don't know whether to feel comforted or even more unsettled. When you return to your chamber, the maids are quick to chatter. They want details, hoping for a new story to pass around the laundry fires. You keep your answers vague, letting them fill in the blanks as they wish. You've learned by now that the less you say, the safer you are. Still, the stories grow. By midday, there are already new rumors about the inspection. I heard they found a scar on her leg. Must be from a secret lover. Did you see how pale she looked at luncheon? She must have failed. Your friends, other girls caught in the same net, swap stories of near misses and clever evasions. One admits she smeared a little honey on her cheeks before the inspection to seem innocent and fresh. "They like it when you blush," she confides, and everyone laughs, tension dissolving for just a moment. Behind the laughter, though, is the ever-present fear. You know that one word from the testers can unmake you, can unmake your whole family, for that matter. Fathers who once boasted of your perfection will look away in shame. Mothers will wring their hands and ask the saints where they went wrong. It's a burden you never chose, but it's one you must carry with poise and silence. At times you wonder about the testers themselves. Did they once sit where you do now? Did they dread the same knock on the door? Or did they learn over decades that power lies not in innocence but in the ability to judge others? The older girls say some testers were themselves accused long ago, and that this is how they clawed their way back into favour. Best to be the one holding the scales than the one being weighed, one says, half serious, half sad. The cycle repeats with every new batch of brides. The court physician sometimes joins the testers, bringing a new layer of discomfort, an expert whose word holds nearly as much weight as a king's. You wonder if he really believes in the ritual, or if he simply enjoys his moment of importance. One joke among the maids: he'd declare a rose unfit for the garden if it blushed at the wrong time. Evenings in the palace are tense after inspection day. The girls gather in small groups, sharing sweets and secrets, everyone trying to forget the morning's ordeal. There are whispered plans to escape, to run off with a handsome knight, to start over in a distant land. You know these are fantasies, the kind that keep you sane when the world feels like a very small box. As you drift off to sleep, you remember the old widow's words. It isn't about you. You repeat them to yourself over and over until they become a shield. Tomorrow, the palace will wake to new gossip, new tests, new parades, but for tonight, you are simply a girl in a quiet room, learning how to survive in a world that values purity over peace, appearance over truth. And somewhere, in the next chamber, another girl is doing the same, holding on, hoping to make it through one more day, one more ritual, one more inspection. When dawn breaks the next day, it brings with it a fresh round of anxieties. You're barely awake before word comes. A physician will visit your chamber today. Another ritual, another test. You're told to prepare, to make yourself presentable but not vain, meek but not so timid that you look ill. In the mirror, you see a reflection crafted by 100 hands. Hair braided tightly, skin powdered, posture arranged just so. You look like a saint on an altar, unreal, untouched, a little lost. Court physicians, you discover, hold a strange power in the palace. Their pronouncements carry almost divine authority. While the testers, those formidable matrons, judge your virtue by rumour and subtle clues, the physician claims to judge by science. But in these courts, science is just another flavour of superstition, and medicine is often another mask for suspicion. He arrives mid-morning, flanked by 2 chaperones. The doctor is always a man, always older, always too assured of his own importance. His robes rustle, heavy with herbs and the tang of camphor. You catch a hint of arrogance in the way he glances around, inspecting the room, the linens, the way the morning sun falls across the rug. You wish, for just a moment, that you could vanish into the shadows. The examination itself is a performance. He asks you questions, some reasonable, some absurd. Are you feeling strong? Do you sleep well? Have you experienced any unusual dreams? Each answer is scribbled down in a leather-bound book, as if your future hangs on the colour of your dreams. You try to sound calm, unremarkable, ordinary, hoping that ordinary is all he's looking for. Then he moves on to more invasive matters. The chaperones watch as he inspects your hands, your eyes, sometimes even your legs or arms for unexplained bruises or marks. In some courts, the examination goes further, into the realm of the humiliating and the intimate. Here, in this room, you pray that it will be brief. The doctor claims to look for signs, a certain way the skin is supposed to appear, a tension in your posture, even the sound of your voice. It's a mix of folklore and pseudo-medicine. One court rumour says a skilled physician can tell a maiden by the purity of her breath. Another claims that a single glance at your earlobes can reveal your entire romantic history. You try not to laugh. A single giggle at the wrong time could end everything. You remember, not so long ago, hearing stories about court doctors in Florence who would declare a girl intact or spoiled after an examination lasting no more than a minute. Their word was law. If a doctor found you lacking, your marriage might be called off, your dowry returned, your family shamed. Sometimes an examination was demanded not just before the wedding, but after, especially if a husband suspected his new wife was not as untouched as promised. You think about how many women must have sat here, dreading the doctor's verdict, wondering if their own bodies would betray them. The physician in your chamber is businesslike. He examines your face, makes you open your mouth to check your teeth for signs of illness, he claims, though you suspect he's looking for anything that might hint at an unruly appetite or a hidden vice. He asks about your menstrual cycle, the regularity of your sleep, whether you've had night terrors. The questions are so personal you want to shrink away, but you answer them, your voice steady. Throughout, the chaperones never speak, but their presence is a shield and a shackle. They will confirm that the examination was done properly, that nothing untoward occurred, at least not by the standards of the court. When it's finally over, the doctor stands, wipes his hands, and delivers his verdict, fit for marriage. Virtuous in all observable ways. The chaperones nod, and you're dismissed. You return to your window, staring out at the distant city. The relief is sharp, but so is the anger. All this for a stranger's word. You wonder, for the 100th time, what these men know of virtue or of you. And yet, here, a doctor's word is iron, a key that unlocks the next door, or slams it shut forever. The palace is already abuzz with news. The servants whisper about your success, about how lucky your family is, about how fortunate your betrothed must be. The word spreads faster than the baker's rolls on a festival day. You hear echoes of your name in every hallway, followed by a string of reassurances. The doctor said she's perfect. The family is safe. You take no pleasure in the praise. It's not really about you after all. It's about the performance, the game, the endless series of hoops to jump through. You wonder how many other girls are sitting in their rooms this morning, waiting for the doctor, for the chaperones, for the verdict. You think of them, and hope that at the very least, their doctors will be kind. Still, you notice how the court's attention shifts as quickly as a breeze. Now that you've passed the doctor's test, other girls become the subject of speculation. Who will be next? Who might falter? The same courtiers who praised you yesterday will cast doubt on you tomorrow, given the slightest reason. It's all as fragile as the white lilies that fill the palace gardens. Beautiful, easily bruised. You remember one physician, infamous for severity, who once declared a girl unfit because her hands were too rough, suggesting she'd been up to inappropriate labor. The reality? She'd spent her childhood tending her family's garden. Nothing more. The ruling stood, her engagement collapsed, her parents left scrambling to find another suitor. It's a lesson everyone learns early. Truth is, whatever those in power decide it to be, you console yourself with small acts of rebellion, a secret smile to a friend, a whispered joke about the doctor's mustache, a tiny slice of forbidden cake snuck in after dinner. These moments become lifelines, little reminders that you are more than the sum of your examinations. At night, as you lie awake, you try to remember a time before all this, before the rituals, the inspections, the endless scrutiny. You think about the ordinary girls in the city, laughing with their friends, running through the streets, unburdened by the weight of virtue. For a moment, you let yourself dream of a world where you can be judged by your kindness, your cleverness, your courage, anything but the verdict of a court physician. But morning always comes, and with it, another round of tests. The palace never sleeps, and neither does its appetite for certainty. You steel yourself for the days ahead, knowing that every ritual survived is a small, quiet victory. The halls grow quieter as the day fades. You watch the sun set, painting gold across the city, and wonder what stories will be whispered about you tomorrow, what tests you'll face next, what verdicts will be handed down, what games you'll have to play to remain virtuous in all observable ways. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, clinging to the knowledge that, beneath the surface, you are still yourself. You are not a diagnosis, a bedsheet, or a rumor. You are a girl who survived the rituals of purity and will survive whatever comes next. By now, you've learned that purity at court is never just about passing a test. It's about wearing it, living it, and being seen to embody it every waking moment. Once you've survived the physicians and the testers, another challenge emerges, softer in tone but just as insistent. You must not only be pure but also appear as if you've been plucked straight from a stained glass window. Not just a virgin, but a virgin with a capital V and the robes to match. This is where the real theatre of courtly virtue begins. You are dressed in layers of white and pale blue, colours chosen to evoke the Virgin Mary herself. Your hair is arranged to look innocent, a single braid or soft waves, with a ribbon or a simple wreath of flowers. No rouge, no powder too bright, just a wash of rosewater, a dab of honey at the lips, enough to give the impression of health, not seduction. The seamstresses take their cues from religious art, sewing gowns with high collars and long sleeves, sometimes adding tiny pearls, little reminders of chastity, purity, the unspoiled sea. You join the other young women for morning prayers in the palace chapel, kneeling beneath a ceiling painted with saints and angels. The air is thick with incense, and the candlelight flickers over faces lined with anticipation and sometimes bored. You try to focus on the words, on the soft music, but it's hard not to let your eyes wander. Every movement is being watched by priests, by matrons, by other girls who will remember if you fidget or whisper or fail to bow at the right moment. It's here, in the silence of the chapel, that you feel the weight of expectation most keenly. The single glance at a painting of the Madonna, the stray thought about what it means to be pure. It all becomes a measure, a yardstick held up to your every gesture. The sermons too make their message clear. Be as the Virgin was, humble, silent, patient, and above all untouched. You imagine Mary hovering over your shoulder, noting each moment you step out of line. The pressure is relentless, but it's dressed in flowers and gold leaf. During feast days you are made to walk in processions, carrying lilies or roses, trailing behind statues of saints. You keep your head bowed, eyes demurely cast down, resisting the urge to giggle when a bee lands on a petal or a lady trips on her hem. At least once per season, you are called upon to recite a prayer or sing a hymn for visiting dignitaries. Her voice is so pure, someone whispers, as if the state of your soul can be measured by a few well-sung notes. Behind closed doors, however, you and the other girls share a different story. You swap tales about saints who outwitted demons, heroines who escaped wicked kings, and clever maids who turned the tables on their would-be judges. One night, someone dares to impersonate the bishop's voice, delivering a mock sermon about the dangers of giggling during Mass. Laughter bubbles up, quick and sweet, until you all fall into a heap, shushing each other in terror of being overheard. Still, the rituals of appearance are unending. On certain feast days, you're required to don elaborate hairdresses and take part in tableaux vivants, living statues where you pose as Mary or as some long-dead venerated virgin. It's an odd thing to stand motionless in the great hall while courtiers pass by, nodding approvingly at your posture and your piety. You try not to think about your foot falling asleep or the itch beneath your sleeve. She looks so serene, someone will say, and you can't help but want to wink. Sometimes you're summoned to sit for a painter, so the court can add another portrait to its endless gallery of exemplary daughters. The artist arranges you just so, turning your face to catch the light, positioning your hands like those in the old icons. Try to look mysterious, he murmurs, as if you know a secret. You do know a secret, of course, that the gown pinches under the arms, that your foot is numb, that you'd rather be outside in the garden, but you hold still, hold your tongue, and become another image of ideal womanhood to hang on the wall. There is, of course, an endless parade of role models. Your governess reads you the lives of saints, Lucy, Agnes, Cecilia, virgins all, paragons of patience and piety. The stories are often grim. Saint Lucy pulls out her own eyes to avoid being desired. Saint Agnes resists marriage even under threat of death. You and your friends groan. If only resisting marriage were so easy, one whispers, to a chorus of stifled giggles. But sometimes, the stories give you strength. If Lucy could face down tyrants, if Agnes could keep her courage, perhaps you can get through one more procession, one more feast, one more day of being watched. You also notice how appearance itself becomes a kind of armor. The right gown, the right smile, the perfect posture. These are not just costumes, but shields. You learn to hide your fear and your boredom behind layers of lace and composure. And on those rare days when you catch your reflection in a polished shield or a window pane, you sometimes see not just the frightened girl you were, but the strong, careful woman you are becoming. Still, it's easy to lose yourself in the performance. You begin to wonder where the costume ends, and you begin. When a visiting priest praises your modesty, you feel both proud and a little resentful. Is it really you he sees? or just the veil and the gentle smile. You remember what your mother once said: people see what they expect to see. Give them the right mask, and you can keep your true face safe. As the weeks turn to months, you find new ways to survive the court's obsession with appearances. Sometimes, it's a shared glance with another girl, a secret joke about who has the itchiest dress, the most unwieldy headdress. Other times, it's a quiet moment in the garden, where you can slip off your shoes and remember what it feels like to be ordinary. Every so often, you catch the Queen Mother watching you. Her gaze is sharp, but there is something in it, pride perhaps, or longing, or a trace of her own younger self. You wonder if she too was forced to play this role, to wear the mask of perfect virtue, to hide her real self behind silk and silver. The thought makes you a little bolder, a little braver. At night after prayers, you sit by your window and watch the stars. You imagine Saint Cecilia playing her music, Saint Lucy standing strong, Mary serene and untouchable. You let yourself dream of a future where you can be both pure and powerful, where your worth isn't measured by your likeness to a painting or a legend, but by the quiet strength you carry inside. And until that day comes, you play your part. You walk the corridors with your head held high, your hands folded just so, your smile mysterious. You become both the image and the girl behind it, living proof that purity is not just a state, but a performance, a costume, a shield, and sometimes, when you're lucky, a source of secret joy. The performance of purity is relentless, but the consequences for slipping or simply being accused of it are what haunt every waking moment in the palace. Now the white veils and gentle songs are traded for something darker: punishment, shame, and public spectacle. This is when you truly understand that, in royal courts, the price of a misstep is higher than gold. It always begins with a whisper. Someone saw a girl speaking to the wrong person in the garden, or sneaking an extra honey cake from the kitchens, or worst of all, sharing a laugh with a young squire. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe everything happened. It doesn't really matter. The machinery of accusation grinds into motion as soon as doubt is cast. At first, there's only a change in the atmosphere, a subtle withdrawal of smiles, a coolness at dinner, a silence when the accused enters a room. It's astonishing how quickly friendships turn to distance, how eager people are to preserve their own innocence by avoiding yours. One day you're parading in white, the next you're a ghost, your former friends pretending not to know your favorite songs or your whispered jokes about the Queen Mother's snoring. You try to remember the earliest rumors you heard as a child. There was the girl whose ribbon fell from her hair as she ran down the stairs, and just like that, she was wild. There was the kitchen maid who was caught singing with a stable boy and vanished before sunrise. The lesson was always clear. In the world of the court, innocence is not a state, but a story anyone can rewrite if they whisper loudly enough. If an accusation can't be quietly contained, it's dragged out into the open. The punishments for spoiling the prize range from subtle to spectacularly cruel. Sometimes it's simply exile. You are sent away to a distant relative, a convent, or a crumbling estate in the countryside. The world moves on. Your name is not mentioned except as a warning. But if the crime is considered serious enough, or if the scandal is too juicy to resist, the punishment becomes a lesson for everyone. You might be summoned to stand before the court, head bowed, as a list of supposed infractions is read aloud. She exchanged glances with a stranger. She was seen alone after dark. She resisted the physician's examination. Each charge, true or not, is repeated until even you start to wonder what really happened. One notorious ritual, repeated across Europe for centuries, was the public shaming parade. The accused is forced to walk the length of the palace in a tattered gown, hair loose and unbound, a symbol of disorder and disgrace. The courtiers watch in silence, their faces carefully blank, but you catch the flicker of fear in every girl's eyes. If it could happen to her, it could happen to me. Sometimes the Queen Mother herself looks away, unable to meet your gaze. There are gentler versions of punishment too. You may be made to sit at the table of penance during meals, eating alone while others gossip in hushed voices. Or you may be assigned endless hours of prayer, kneeling on cold stone, fingers laced tight until they ache. The message is always the same. You are no longer part of the story. Your presence is an uncomfortable reminder of what everyone fears. Worst of all is the fate reserved for those who truly scandalize the court. The ancient punishment of head shaving is rare but never forgotten. Your hair, once your pride and the very symbol of your purity, is cut away in front of witnesses. The act is both practical, no more loose hair to tempt or be tempted, and symbolic. Your status as a maiden erased in a single snip. Afterward, you're given a coarse veil and sent to the farthest chapel, where only the most pious or the most broken end up. Yet, for all the cruelty, there is always an undercurrent of doubt. Most punishments are not about justice, but about appearances. The court needs someone to blame, someone to fear. After your penance, life goes on. The beds are changed, the flowers refreshed. A new girl is paraded in white. You become a cautionary tale, your story retold with new flourishes until no one remembers the truth. Still, not every ending is tragic. Some girls find strength in exile. A few, sent to convents, become powerful abbesses, wielding a different kind of authority. Others return after years away, transformed by time and distance into women no longer haunted by courtly games. A rare few even manage to reclaim their place, through luck, wit, or the intervention of a sympathetic ally. For those who remain, the lesson is brutal, but clear. You learn to move carefully, to keep your words soft, your gaze lowered, your friendships discreet. You practice the art of saying nothing at all, of appearing busy when you are bored, and of hiding your true feelings beneath layers of calm. But at night, when the palace is silent, you remember every girl who vanished, every laugh that turned to silence, every step from honored guest to outcast. You understand now, more than ever, that the obsession with purity is never really about virtue. It is about power. Who has it, who wields it, and who can be sacrificed to keep it intact. Sometimes, you and the other girls gather in the dark, voices low, sharing dreams of escape, of another life where your worth is not measured by rumors or punishments. You promise to remember each other, to tell the real stories someday, if only to yourselves. And somewhere, far from the glare of the throne room, a girl sits quietly in a distant chapel, her hair shorn, her heart still whole, hoping that one day the world will value her not for what she has lost, but for what she has survived. The palace may pride itself on its rituals and punishments, but not everyone plays by the rules. For every tale of disgrace there are quieter stories, stories of secret lovers, silken lies, and girls who outwit the system just enough to claim a sliver of happiness in a world obsessed with purity. You hear the whispers first among the maids, how Lady Myrael meets her tutor in the rose garden after Vespers, or how a stable boy was seen passing notes to a duchess's daughter beneath the kitchen windows. Some stories are wild fantasy, embroidered with each retelling. Others are as real as the scent of crushed lavender on the sheets. In a court where everyone is watched, secrecy becomes an art form. You learn over time how the system can be bent, how even the harshest rules have cracks where the bold or desperate might slip through. You witness alliances forged in glances across a crowded ballroom, love letters tucked between pages of prayer books, coded messages woven into embroidery, tiny birds, specific flowers, a twist in the pattern only a beloved would understand. One of your closest friends, clever and sharp-tongued, keeps a journal hidden in a hollow behind a chapel statue. In it are records of clandestine meetings, sometimes just a few words, sometimes entire conversations written in a cipher passed down from her older sister. She shares it with you one night, candle flickering, laughter bubbling up as you realize how many forbidden courtships have danced just out of sight of the ever-watchful matrons. Not all these stories end in tragedy. Some surprisingly end in marriage. There are girls who, through wit and careful planning, steer their secret love into a politically convenient union. Others, like Lady Myrael, are caught but saved by a timely pregnancy, evidence that the marriage can and must go ahead. The father is seldom questioned if the union fits the family's ambitions, and everyone chooses to forget the timeline. But for every secret romance that ends in escape or marriage, another ends in heartbreak or exposure. Sometimes it's the chaperone who betrays a girl, lured by promises of gold or advancement. Other times it's simply bad luck, a door creaking at the wrong moment, a letter falling into the wrong hands. You see it happen more than once. A girl's world collapsing in an instant, her family's fortunes shifting on the tide of scandal. And yet, you can't help but admire the ingenuity of the girls who resist. There are methods passed from friend to friend, generation to generation, tricks for staining sheets with herbs, for faking blushes, for outmaneuvering the nosiest matrons. You hear about a legendary chambermaid who could spirit a lover into an out-of-a-bed chamber in under 5 minutes, leaving no trace but a single loose thread. Her nickname, whispered with awe, is the Weaver. You yourself are approached, once by a handsome page with laughter in his eyes and a secret to share. The risk is as thrilling as it is terrifying. You imagine the consequences: ruin, exile, shame, but you also imagine the joy of a stolen hour, a love that is yours and yours alone. For now, you decline, but the memory of possibility lingers, sweeter than any courtly compliment. There are inevitably those who play a more dangerous game. Some noblewomen, desperate to escape unwanted marriages, turn to potions and old wives' tricks. The apothecary, always on the edge of scandal himself, sells powders to delay a wedding night, concoctions to fake a maidenhead, even, on rare occasions, a vial of poison to end a scandal before it begins. These secrets are traded quietly, always at great risk. The apothecary's silence is worth its weight in gold. Court festivals and masquerades become fertile ground for romance and intrigue. Disguises are worn, masks hiding flushed cheeks and daring glances. Behind the anonymity of velvet and feathers, rules bend and hearts race. One festival, you witness a masked couple slip away from the revelers, returning only when dawn streaks the sky pink and gold. The next day, gossip swirls. No one knows, or will admit to knowing, who they were. It becomes a new story, woven into the palace's tapestry of secrets. You and your friends develop your own rituals for secrecy. A tap on the window means danger. A borrowed handkerchief signals a secret meeting. You become experts at leaving no trace, at keeping stories straight. In a strange way, the pressure to be perfect creates a camaraderie, a silent understanding among girls who know how much is at stake. There are moments of real joy too. Bursts of laughter when a plan goes off without a hitch. Sighs of relief when the chaperones are outwitted. One day your friend smuggles a kitten into the dormitory, hidden beneath her cloak. The laughter that night is loud enough to draw a matron, but the kitten disappears beneath the bed just in time, and the story becomes another secret to share. Still, you never forget the risk. Each lie, each secret, is a tightrope walk over an abyss. You see the nervous looks exchanged after an unplanned encounter, the hurried prayers whispered before morning inspection. Sometimes you wonder if the fear is worth the fleeting happiness, but then you remember, in a world that denies you choice, even small rebellions are precious. The Queen Mother is not blind to these undercurrents. Once you see her pause at a doorway, watching two girls bent together over a book. Her expression is unreadable. Disapproval, perhaps, but also something softer, sadder. You realize that for all her strictness, she too once played these games, risked these dangers before power required her to pretend innocence was easy. Somewhere in the palace, a bell rings, and another day of careful deception begins. You adjust your veil, smooth your gown, and step back into the light, knowing you will carry your secrets with you. Maybe, one day, the stories will change. Maybe the girls who outwitted the system will be remembered not for their mistakes, but for their courage and wit. For now, you walk quietly, laugh carefully, and cherish each hidden joy. A smile, a wink, a whisper, proof that even in a world obsessed with purity, the heart finds its own ways to survive. It's the morning after, and the world is holding its breath. You wake before dawn, heart pounding, to the muffled sounds of water being poured and slippers shuffling on stone. Today's drama is older than your grandmother's rosary. The bedsheet ritual. In royal courts across Europe and far beyond, the proof of a bride's virginity isn't a whispered promise, but a public spectacle. Forget privacy. Forget dignity. It's a parade for the high and mighty, everyone from the Queen Mother to that eavesdropping scullery maid, whose hearing is suspiciously sharp when gossip is on the line. At least you think. No one's selling tickets. Not officially, anyway. You shuffle to the washstand, splash water on your face, and wonder if any amount of scrubbing could ever remove the embarrassment that comes from being the centerpiece of a bedsheet parade. The court physician arrives first, solemn as a judge. He's followed by 2 women from the Queen's household, one as brisk as vinegar, the other with a sympathetic smile that's almost worse than scorn. They inspect the linen like it's an ancient map, searching for landmarks. You recall last night's whispering, "If there's no blood, there'll be trouble." The phrase repeats in your mind like a nursery rhyme gone wrong. The scrutiny is meticulous. The physician prods at a faint spot with a finger, humming to himself, while the 2 ladies lean in, nostrils flaring. The air is tense enough to curdle cream. The Queen Mother's advisor stands back, arms folded, watching with eyes that miss nothing. You try to breathe, but the room feels smaller with each passing second. In many royal courts, a spotless sheet is a disaster. The implications are as clear as the sunlight slanting across the floor. Is she a fraud? Did someone get there first? The questions hang in the air, unspoken but deafening. A single missed spot, whether from nervousness, anatomy, or plain bad luck, can upend dynasties. Sometimes, a helpful maid is blamed for laundering too thoroughly. Sometimes, the bride's diet is questioned, as if a few extra figs might have changed the outcome. You start to wonder if court life is just one long game of whodunit, starring you as the clueless suspect. You'd laugh if it weren't your reputation at stake. Somewhere, someone jokes, if only they inspected the royal treasury with half as much care. But here on this morning, your fate hangs on the interpretation of a tiny stain. There are those who prepare for this test with more cunning than faith. Whispered advice passed from sister to sister, friend to friend. Prick your finger, hide a sliver of animal blood, call upon a loyal maid to slip a red-dyed cloth beneath the sheet. Sometimes it works, sometimes the deception is discovered, and the consequences spiral. You wonder how many women throughout history have knelt in prayer, not for a happy marriage, but for a convincing bloodstain. In one French court, the bedsheet would be paraded through the Great Hall, held aloft on a wooden rod. Courtiers would jostle for position, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the telltale mark. The royal steward, whose job included inventorying everything from fine silver to unfortunately soiled linen, would record the event with solemn ceremony. Her virtue is proved, he'd announce, as if stamping a royal decree. You wonder if anyone ever dared to disagree. Elsewhere, in the Italian city-states, the process was slightly less theatrical, but no less nerve-wracking. Mothers-in-law would crowd into the new couple's bedchamber at sunrise, peering at the linens, sometimes sniffing them as if searching for the scent of sin. More than one unlucky bride was accused of plotting, bribery, or worse if the evidence was lacking. One Milanese noblewoman, accused of insufficient proof, was sent back to her family in disgrace, a return shipment no one wanted to accept. Even when the ritual succeeded, relief was fleeting. A single night's proof was no guarantee of future happiness. The Queen Mother's smile might last for a day, but tongues kept wagging long after the sheets were laundered. Every woman in the palace knew the real lesson. Nothing you do will ever be enough for everyone. And yet, some women turn the ritual to their own advantage. A clever girl with quick wits and trustworthy friends might stage the entire affair, providing a bloodied cloth before the sun had even risen. Occasionally, an ally in the laundry would discover the crucial evidence and deliver it with appropriate fanfare. You suspect more than one royal reputation was rescued by a timely prick of the thumb and a sharp-eyed chambermaid. The court itself seems to run on rumor as much as ritual. By midday, everyone knows the result. If there is blood, the household celebrates well, as much as anyone can celebrate a stain. If not, the Queen Mother becomes icy. The king's advisors grow nervous, and the bride is left to stew in a soup of suspicion and whispered slander. You escape to the gardens, trying to avoid the court's curious stares. The air is fresh, the flowers blooming despite the tension that lingers behind you. But even here, you can't shake the feeling of being watched. The gardeners gossip in low voices, sharing stories of past brides who failed the test and what became of them. Some were quietly sent away to distant relatives, others forced into convents. The lucky ones, if you can call them that, simply faded from courtly life. their names spoken only in cautionary tales. Sometimes the ritual takes a darker turn. You hear whispers of girls subjected to medical examinations by the court's physician, supposedly to confirm the state of their hymen. These inspections are as invasive as they are humiliating, a reminder that in the royal court your body is never entirely your own. The doctor might claim scientific detachment, but his conclusions carry the weight of law. Woe to the bride with an anatomy that doesn't match the textbook illustration. One court physician, famed for his precision, once declared a princess unfit for marriage, based solely on his examination. The resulting scandal rocked the palace for months, ending only when a rival doctor discovered a previously overlooked sign of virtue. You wonder if any of these men know what they're looking for, or if the whole affair is just a game of power and appearances. There are, of course, those who quietly rebel. A knowing glance exchanged between bridesmaids, a snicker behind a fan, a whispered joke at the expense of the court's obsession. One woman, legendary for her wit, reportedly asked the Queen Mother if she'd like to inspect her soul instead of her sheets. The Queen, scandalized, fainted on the spot, a moment that still elicits giggles in the servants' quarters. And so the cycle continues. Every wedding brings another round of anxiety, another parade of evidence, another lesson in the art of surviving scrutiny. You realize that, in some ways, it's the court's obsession with purity that binds everyone together. The rules might be unfair, the rituals absurd, but in this strange world, everyone knows their part. You return to your chamber, passing a group of young girls clustered around a window. They look at you with wide eyes, half fearful, half admiring. To them, you're a cautionary tale in the making, a reminder of what's expected and what's at stake. You offer a small, reassuring smile, though you're not sure it helps. As night falls, the palace settles into uneasy silence. Somewhere, a musician plays a melancholy tune on a lute. The moonlight slants across the marble floors, catching on a stray thread, a dropped ribbon, a secret yet to be discovered. You drift to sleep, knowing tomorrow will bring another test, another judgment, another day of being watched. But for now, in this brief moment between rituals, you find a sliver of peace. Maybe tomorrow, the world will be different. Maybe the next bride will walk her path with less fear and more freedom. Or maybe, like you, she'll simply learn to hide her scars behind a smile and a spotless sheet. If there's one rule that runs thicker than blood through the veins of the royal court, it's this. Double standards are not just tolerated, they are the foundation. Every day you see it in action. While you and the other court girls are measured, tested and paraded for your virtue, the men, especially the royals, float above such scrutiny, their indiscretions spun into charming legends, or more often simply ignored. While you and the other court girls are measured, tested and paraded for your virtue, the men, especially the royals, float above such scrutiny, their indiscretions spun into charming legends, or more often simply ignored. Take the king, for instance. His mistresses are an open secret. Every court has them, housed in their own gilded chambers, their beauty and wit discussed almost as eagerly as the next political alliance. The courtiers might whisper about scandal, but more often, they swap stories about the latest royal favourite as if discussing the best horse in the stables. There are even ballads sung about the king's passions, with none of the judgment reserved for any girl accused of straying even once. You watch as royal mistresses glide through the halls, their gowns in colours forbidden to others, their laughter echoing with the confidence of someone immune to consequence. These women wield real power, sometimes greater than queens themselves. A smile from the king, a passing favour, and fortunes are made or ruined in a day. The very court that insists you be spotless celebrates their intrigue. In the salons, poets and artists compete for the attention of the king's latest paramour, painting her as a muse or goddess. It's dizzying, this hypocrisy. You notice how the same lords who warn their daughters about the dangers of temptation will boast about their own conquests, slap each other's backs, share bawdy stories in the corner. You hear the jokes. A prince must practice before marriage, mustn't he? There's always an excuse, a justification, a wink. You realize quickly that while your mistakes are carved in stone, theirs are written in sand. The women at court notice too. Some are resigned. Men will be men, they say, a phrase that grows bitterer every time it's uttered. Others find ways to resist, subtly or not so subtly. The Queen Mother, for all her composure, sometimes allows a flicker of disapproval to cross her face when the king parades a new mistress at a banquet. The other noblewomen tighten their lips, exchange glances, and then return to their needlework or their children. But the mistresses are not merely victims or villains. Many are cunning, resourceful, even sympathetic. Some rise from humble backgrounds, using wit and charm to climb farther than any proper girl could hope to. They cultivate friendships with powerful men, secure positions for their relatives, sometimes even influence the policies of the realm. There are risks, of course. A mistress who loses favor can fall as quickly as she rose. Scandal, exile, or worse can follow if she is too bold or too careless. You wonder what it would be like to live with that freedom, to taste even a fraction of that power. The world is so different for them. Yes, dangerous, but in a way that seems almost honest. At least their roles are acknowledged. They are not asked to be both perfect and invisible at once. The hypocrisy is everywhere. During festivals, the king and his favourites disappear for private entertainments. When a nobleman is caught with a lover, it's considered a youthful adventure. But when a court girl is seen talking to a servant, her reputation is shredded before sunset. One rule for him, another for you. And yet, these double standards are maintained with a relentless logic. You understand after a while that the court's obsession with your purity is not really about virtue or honor. It's about property, about keeping bloodlines clean, inheritance unquestioned, alliances secure. A girl's chastity is state property, as valuable to the realm as its crown jewels. The king's affairs may be embarrassing, but they don't threaten the line of succession. Your smallest mistake does. You find yourself both angry and amused by the whole arrangement. Sometimes the girls gather in secret to parody the men, mocking their swagger, imitating their boasts, imagining a world where daughters could claim the same freedoms as sons. Laughter is a kind of rebellion, a way to survive when fairness seems a distant dream. Still, some girls try to flip the script. The boldest among you, perhaps with no dowry left to risk, flirt openly, daring the court to punish them as harshly as it punishes the men. Others, like the clever Lady Marielle, keep their secrets and bide their time, hoping for a chance at power on their own terms. But most learn to navigate the double standards as best they can, protecting themselves and each other, reminding one another in quiet moments. It's not you, it's the rules. And if the men's transgressions are rewarded and yours are condemned, at least you can see the truth clearly. You may not be able to change the game, but you'll play it with your eyes open, every step a silent act of defiance. And so, the court stories continue. Kings and mistresses, daughters and dowries, double standards that never quite vanish. You find your own way to stand tall, even as the world insists you keep your eyes lowered, and you wonder what it might take someday to rewrite the rules altogether. In a court obsessed with a woman's untouched state, a select few discover that refusing to surrender that prize is paradoxically its own kind of power. The Virgin Queen is an icon, a legend, a puzzle that kings and diplomats chase but never claim. Here, abstinence, whether real or rumoured, becomes a strategy. For some, like England's Elizabeth I, it is the very shield that keeps their sovereignty intact. Here, abstinence, whether real or rumoured, becomes a strategy. For some, like England's Elizabeth I, it is the very shield that keeps their sovereignty intact. You've heard the stories, of course. She will wed no man but her country. She is married to the realm. The court whispers, the poets swoon, and suitors travel from across the seas to try their luck. You can almost hear the unspoken message in every negotiation. The body of a royal woman is not just a prize, but a battlefield. For most girls, virginity is a commodity traded away in marriage. For a rare handful, it is armor invincibility. Elizabeth's decision to remain the Virgin Queen is discussed in hushed tones by matrons and aspiring brides alike. Some see it as prudence, others as cunning, and more than a few as simple stubbornness. You imagine what it would be like to possess that sort of freedom, to wield your virtue as a weapon rather than a leash. But it isn't only queens who use celibacy to their advantage. Throughout the courts of Europe, powerful women, princesses, regents, abbesses, have found ways to stall, evade, or simply refuse the matches arranged for them. I am not yet ready. The omens are unfavourable. My health is delicate. Each excuse buys more time, more leverage. You see it in the eyes of clever dowagers, in the measured tones of abbesses who rule their convents like queens. Some play the game so well that they are never forced to marry at all. Celibacy, when chosen, grants a certain autonomy. The queen who resists marriage cannot be traded for an alliance or forced to bear an heir for a rival. She is both revered and feared. Revered for her self-control, feared for her unpredictability. The court finds this ambiguity both maddening and irresistible. Poets craft sonnets about unplucked roses and hidden gardens. Ambassadors write letters home full of speculation and hope. Of course, strategic abstinence is not without its dangers. For every virgin queen there are 100 girls shut away in convents, their power muted, their stories unwritten. Some families see religious vows as the best way to protect a daughter's virtue and their own fortunes. She has the heart of a nun, they say. But often it's not piety, just practicality. The convent becomes both sanctuary and prison, a place to fade quietly, or if one is lucky and clever, to rule with a velvet fist. But for the rare woman who makes celibacy her own, who shapes it rather than being shaped by it, the world holds its breath. Every gesture, every rumor, every word is analyzed for hidden meaning. Is her resolve genuine? Is she secretly in love with someone unsuitable? Is her virtue a shield for something else entirely? The speculation is endless, and that is the queen's secret weapon. So long as no one knows for sure, her suitors and her enemies remain at bay. Even in the small, daily routines of court, you see echoes of this strategy. Girls learn to say, "not yet," to hint at delicate health or pressing religious duties. Mothers teach their daughters how to delay, how to dodge, how to survive just a little longer until the right offer comes. The best among them never say yes, never say no, just smile and leave the question hanging. You think about Elizabeth, about the nuns who rule their own domains, about the abbesses who hold more land and power than many barons. There's something quietly rebellious in it, a refusal to be defined by the demands of marriage and motherhood, a way to shape your own fate in a world determined to shape you. At night, you and your friends talk about what it would mean to choose for yourselves. Would you want a husband, a lover, a kingdom, or would you prefer a quiet room, a stack of books, a key to your own door? The court expects one answer, but in the darkness your dreams take different forms. You come to realize that sometimes the greatest freedom is the one you claim by refusing to choose at all. In the game of power and purity, the Virgin Queen wins not by giving in, but by never giving herself away. It's a lonely road perhaps, but one lined with the respect, sometimes the fear of everyone who must play by the rules you have managed somehow to bend. And as dawn approaches and another day in the palace begins, you remember, abstinence is not always loss. Sometimes it is the most unexpected victory of all. If the royal court is a stage, then deception is one of its finest arts, especially when it comes to maintaining the myth of purity. For every honest bride, there is a tale of fakery, staged blood, forged tokens, clever illusions. You learn early that appearances aren't just everything. They are sometimes all you have. It begins, as so many court secrets do, with whispered advice from an older girl. If you must, prick your finger, she says, sliding you a tiny sewing needle. A drop of blood in the right place is worth more than 100 prayers. Another offers a tiny vial of red dye. Just a few drops on the linen, no one will know. These tokens become talismans, tucked beneath pillows or hidden in the seams of wedding gowns. Insurance against the unpredictability of anatomy and the unforgiving gaze of the court. The practice is an open secret. Maids are sometimes called upon to prepare the bridal bed, tucking away a scrap of chicken liver or a piece of beetroot. The bedchamber itself becomes a stage set, the sheets carefully chosen for their ability to show a stain. The housekeeper, the laundress, even the family priest might be in on the charade. Better a harmless deception, they say, than a ruined life. You hear stories of girls whose mothers taught them the precise way to smear a little blood, or who rehearsed the act so many times they could cry on command when the time came to reveal the evidence. One mother is said to have stitched a tiny pouch of animal blood into her daughter's nightgown. Another smuggled in a wax seal painted crimson to be pressed discreetly onto the linen. Not all deceptions are so literal. Sometimes it's a performance, a carefully timed sob, a dramatic feint, a trembling voice recounting the pain of the first night. You and your friends joke about the elaborate lengths girls have gone to, faking headaches to avoid inspection, feigning innocence in the face of sly questions, practicing blushing in the mirror. If you can't be virtuous, be convincing. An old saying goes, the line between truth and theatre is as thin as a bedsheet. The men, for the most part, either do not know or pretend not to know. Husbands who are in on the deception often look the other way. Sometimes it suits them to believe, sometimes they simply don't care. In a world where alliances and fortunes are at stake, what matters most is that the ritual be performed, the story maintained, the court appeased. Of course, deception carries risks. There are tales of schemes gone awry, a chicken liver found too late, a sheet too clean, a stain that won't dry quickly enough, a careless maid is blamed, a laundress dismissed, but always the girl stands at the centre, holding her breath as her future hangs in the balance. Still, for many, the charade is the only lifeline. The rules are impossible, the consequences unforgiving. If fate or biology does not cooperate, a little trickery is often the only thing that stands between survival and ruin. You realize that for all its talk of truth and virtue, the court runs on illusion, on shared stories and silent agreements. There are even professionals who make a living from these rituals. In some cities, midwives and apothecaries sell virginity restorers, powders and pastes to be used before the wedding night, herbs said to tighten the body, dyes to stain the linen, discretion guaranteed, their pamphlets promise. Results assured. It is an industry built on anxiety, maintained by need, and whispered about in every noble house. You marvel at the ingenuity, the quiet desperation, and the resilience of the girls who refuse to be undone by an accident of nature or the sharp eyes of a matron. You understand now that beneath the pageantry and the prayers, survival sometimes means bending the truth until it fits, but it is not always deception for its own sake. Sometimes it is mercy, a mother shielding her daughter, a friend helping another avoid disgrace, a husband choosing kindness over condemnation. In a world built on impossible demands, these small acts of rebellion become gestures of love. At night, you and your friends gather to share stories of successful fakery, of near misses and close calls. The laughter is soft, the relief real. Each tale is a reminder that you are not alone, that others have walked this path before, and that sometimes the cleverest trick is simply to endure. You realize too that the court itself is in on the secret. The testers, the physicians, the matrons, they all have their suspicions, but rarely does anyone look too closely. The illusion must be maintained for everyone's sake. You see it in the way questions go unanswered, in the way evidence is accepted with a knowing nod, in the gentle hush that falls over the room when the ritual is complete. In the end, you understand that the greatest illusion of all is not the blood or the bedsheets or the stage tears. It is the myth that purity is something that can be tested, proved, or lost in a single night. The truth is far more complicated, and everyone in their own way is pretending. And so, you tuck away your needle and your secrets, smooth your sheets, and smile for the watching world. Because sometimes, survival means faking it for the throne, and doing it well enough that no one dares to question what's real. As the years roll by, you come to see that the rituals of purity, these endless tests, performances, punishments, and desperate acts were never only about one girl, one night, or one royal alliance. They are echoes of a much older story, one that lingers long after the bedsheets have been laundered, the crowns passed on, and the whispers of the court have faded into dust. The obsession with virginity, you realize, is a shadow that stretches across centuries, shaping not just the fate of queens and noble women, but the way generations measure worth, honor, and even love. The obsession with virginity, you realize, is a shadow that stretches across centuries, shaping not just the fate of queens and noble women, but the way generations measure worth, honor, and even love. You see it in the next generation. Younger girls are brought up on the same tales you once heard: guard your virtue or risk everything. Mothers pass down their tricks and warnings. Older sisters whisper advice through the slats of shuttered windows. Governesses remind their charges never to trust a sweet word spoken after sunset. The words might change, But the warnings do not. For every new queen crowned, every new bride paraded in white, the rituals repeat, as if the world is afraid to imagine any other way. Even as the outer forms shift, fewer public inspections, subtler punishments, a new generation of physicians touting science instead of superstition, the underlying anxiety remains. At every wedding, behind every closed door, someone is watching, waiting for evidence, prepared to pass judgment. Some courts move on, some cling to the old ways, but the myth of purity is a weed with deep roots. You notice too how the obsession seeps into the world outside the palace. It shapes laws, customs, the words of priests in darkened confessionals. It lurks in the way girls learn to speak softly, laugh quietly, say no, and mean it, but never too firmly. You recognize the familiar, careful dance in every society that tells its daughters that their value lies in what is untested, untouched, unclaimed. Yet beneath it all, change stirs. You hear it in late-night conversations among the younger girls, who dare to question, to wonder if perhaps the worth of a woman is not something that can be bled away in a single night. You see it in mothers who choose kindness over judgment, in friends who keep each other's secrets and lift one another up. The court may keep its rituals, but the world outside is growing restless. Stories spread of women who make their own choices, of marriages built on trust, of girls who survive and even thrive despite the old rules. And you, having walked every step of the ritual, find yourself changed as well. You become a quiet source of comfort for others, a knowing look, a whispered reassurance that they are more than what anyone can prove or inspect. You recognize the quiet rebellion in a well-timed joke, a hand squeezed under the table, a letter hidden in a book. These are the new rituals, forged in solidarity rather than suspicion. With time, the palace becomes less a prison and more a place you understand, even if you never quite belong to it. You watch as customs shift, as the old stories lose their grip, as new ones begin to take their place. Sometimes you even allow yourself to hope that someday the obsession with purity will fade into legend, remembered only as a lesson from a darker age. But you also know how stubborn old myths can be. Even as the world changes, there will always be those who cling to the comfort of simple answers, of rituals that promise certainty where life offers only uncertainty. You walk the corridors, older now, wiser, perhaps a little more patient with those who still believe. And so, the myth lingers. But so do you. The survivors, the rebels, the girls who learn to laugh in secret and care for each other. Your legacy is quieter, but no less real. The echo of the obsession with purity may never vanish entirely, but it grows fainter every year, drowned out by the growing voices of those who have seen through it. In the end, you remember not the fear, but the friendships, not the punishments, but the moments of kindness, not the rituals, but the quiet, steady hope that things can change. Let the palace fade now, let its walls dissolve, the echo of footsteps and laughter drifting gently into silence, the weight of the veils, the glimmer of the candlelit halls, the sharp edge of anxiety. Let them all loosen, one thread at a time, until you are left only with the soft memory of distant voices, the brush of linen against your skin, the secret smile of a friend beside you. You breathe in the hush of your own room. The rituals and the stories belong to another world now, a world of midnight courts and silvered windows, of ancient rules and whispered rebellions. With each breath, the tension ebbs away, replaced by the slow comfort of the present. You have survived every test, real or imagined. You have seen behind the mask of perfection, and found that even in the most rigid of palaces, the heart finds ways to be free. Let your thoughts drift light as a feather on the night air. Let every old worry unravel, every doubt soften, every memory settle into peace. You are no longer being watched, measured, or judged. You are here, now, safe in the quiet that follows the last bell of the court. The world is wide beyond the palace gates, and in it, a new story waits, one written not in fear, but in hope. Tonight, as you close your eyes, know that you carry with you all the courage, wit, and quiet rebellion of every girl who walked those candlelit halls. Rest easy, knowing that the night will hold you gently, and that tomorrow brings new beginnings, free from the burdens of yesterday. Sleep well, dear listener. Sweet dreams.